All right, welcome back to another exciting session at the Smart Protein Summit 2021. This one is a very, very exciting rapid fire session. We've heard today, of course, from Suresh Narayanan talking about a big, bold vision for the sector. We've heard from innovators who are currently coming up and seeking funding. And we've gone through kind of a cooking and consumer insights conversation. I don't want to waste too much time in introing this particular session because we're going to drill very deep into where the sector is right now and how we can go from the early adopter market to true scale within the next 5 years. We have 7 very exciting speakers for the first part of this session. A couple of them are still joining in, but I will quickly introduce them and then move directly into the panel. We have Mr. Rajesh Prasad from Amazon India, Dheeraj Talreja from AAK, Gaurav Sharma from Greenest Foods, Sohil Wazir from Blue Tribe Foods, Mihir Joshi from IFF, Genelia Deshmukh from Imagine Meats, and Harshil Karia from Schbang. So it's a great mix of entrepreneurs, corporate supporters of the space, distribution ecosystem, and of course, marketing and insights on that side of things as well. So thank you everyone for joining us here today. Let's jump right into it. My first question is for Mihir. Mihir, at IFF, International Flavors and Fragrances, formerly DuPont, and you're a title sponsor of the event, you've seen the momentum in this space accelerate over the last couple of years, even before the pandemic. So could you tell us more about how things have progressed very rapidly since we started working together?
Sure. I'll probably cut it by different parts. I would say the best part, and a big credit to, I think, GFI for being that family member who brings everybody together, is from the players who have entered the market, the startups that have come in, the kind of launches that we have seen. There's been an acceleration in the kind of launches that we have seen in the market. But even more interesting for me is when we were having these discussions with customers in 2018 or late 2019, they were still asking the question, why will this work in India? And that question today, when I'm talking to my customers, they are very clear and they're asking, hey, what do I need to do to make it exciting for flexitarians? What do I need to do to target this particular segment in South India? So in those questions, I see a big transition for customers that has already happened. So we are no more trying to convince people about this opportunity. People are already clear. They're using their best capabilities, which is what I love. They found their niche and they're attacking those niches. I think that's a big plus progress that we see. From a consumer, one more piece that I'm very proud of, and I'm a little sentimental about India, but we've seen that the capability in India is really strong. One thing that's, let's say, been hurting me is that unlike Canada, which is very big on this whole protein piece, they're trying to make it a strategic industry. We've not had such kind of, let's say, backing so far from the powers that be. But even then, knowing through my customers, what I've learned is, for example, we have a couple of companies, startups from India who are in X Prize. They have qualified for those. Similarly, a lot of the big multinationals have based their meat alternative centers of excellence in India. So those are two good very signs, I think, to say from a customer capability. That's fabulous. So that's the kind of progress that I see that's happening. From the consumer end, of course, what's really helping is the fact that there is a protein fever that I keep talking about in India. And I think all of us being market driven, that's good news for us. There is plenty to play. And it's that fever is only rising more. So I see a lot of opportunity going forward.
Thank you, Mihir. I'm going to move on to Dheeraj from AAK, also a title sponsor of the event. Dheeraj, a similar question. Have we hit our breakout moment for this in India? What have you seen? Because you've worked also with dozens of startups in this space. What's going on?
So Varun, I'll say that a great progress has happened in the industry. And I believe we'll use the analogy of gardening, actually. So we started with seeding in the past, actually last few years, and now we see that we are at the sprouting and flowering stage with a lot of products which are getting commercialized and putting on the shelf with that. And a lot of improvement is expected in the coming years with that. I think a lot of work needs to be done in the ecosystem, right from the hardware of the ecosystem, which is around the technology that is available, the indigenous raw material which is available, to the software, which is around the people, around the talent or the capabilities to build a sustainable business in the plant-based food space in India.
Thank you, Dheeraj. Let me go to Genelia now. Genelia, I'm glad we were able to get tech issues figured out. So you've recently launched a plant-based meat company, Imagine Meats. You've had a lot of fanfare from the likes of Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan. Could you tell us a little bit about what the response has been from consumers? Because that's where all of this starts.
Yeah, so it's actually been great. I mean, considering that the launch was just like 2 months ago, and we thought we would take a while to go into the other cities, but because the response was so positive and because people were, questioning and asking when is it going to be in our city and when is it going to be in other cities. So we actually had to advance the whole launch into other cities, and so we came into 6 cities faster than we expected ourselves. We thought we would access it. Look at the whole market deal first and then get across. But I think with the kind of response and with the kind of curiosity that was built in, it helped us come out faster. And we already are ready for our next 4 products. So I think that it's because of the demand of consumers that we're looking at going faster more than anything else.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I want to move, this is a similar question for Sohil and Gaurav. Sohil, Blue Tribe Foods has been around for, the official launch was around this time last year, but you've been around for a couple of years. You're seeing incredible momentum currently as you scale across the country. Could you tell us more about your journey and what's working well at the moment?
Sure, Varun. Actually, I mean, you're right. It was, we launched in market exactly a year ago and, to the day. And currently we're present in about 14 cities directly and a couple of other cities through partners, where we're not going direct to consumer, but we're going through retail partners or HoReCa partners, right? What we've noticed across all the cities that we've launched in is that it's a very, very young demographic that's, showing some sort of traction towards this category. And that's who the target audience is. It's people who want a more planet-friendly lifestyle. They could be flexitarians, could be non-vegetarians, could be vegans. But at the core of it, it is people who want to adopt a more planet-friendly lifestyle, who are aware of the impact of the animal agriculture industry, and want to take conscious steps towards mitigating that impact. So we've got great, response from all the cities, from all the cities that we've launched in, and also now we're getting good amount of demand from the HoReCa segment as well, because obviously that is following consumer demand for such alternatives in the HoReCa segment.
Thank you. Go ahead. I want to touch on that a little bit later. So, firstly, congratulations on exactly 1 year. I can't pretend that we planned this, but Gaurav, I think we're not going to unfortunately get your camera working, but I have the same question for you essentially. What are you seeing as you're scaling across the country with Greenest Foods in terms of response to your products and how things are moving right now?
Things are moving at a phenomenal pace, Varun. If I were to talk about one pivotal change, that would be the difference in the awareness of the consumer. Like just compare these 2 scenarios. Almost 5 years back, we used to try selling mock meats from one of our restaurant locations in Delhi NCR. I used to keep struggling to make people understand the meaning of the word mock in relation to meat. And, compare this with today. In July 2021, we picked up one of our restaurant partners' flagship locations, and we, chose a Sunday. What we did was that all of the consumers who were walking in to the restaurant that day and ordering chicken burgers, and this was a risky social experiment, by the way. It's just that we did not fall flat on our face because the product really performed that day. And people who were walking in ordering chicken burgers, without telling them, we just switched to their burger patties with Greenest patties. And it would have been about 35 or 40 odd people that day. By golly, nobody could tell the difference. And and when we walked up to them, to their tables towards the end of their meals, to ask them that to actually break the news to them, this is not even chicken. You're actually having plant-based meat. You know what the reaction was? Across board, the reaction was, oh, so this is here in India now, finally. So, I mean, I see, that's how far India has come in terms of the consumer understanding, at least, as far as the metro and megacity consumers are concerned. Then again, last month, we launched the country's first plant-based chicken burger in the food service across multiple cities with a brand called Burger. 15 days into the launch, we received a second PO from them, and that got me curious. I wanted to draw insights, out of that experience. So I sat with their founding team and I asked them, tell me one thing. Is the new plant-based chicken burger, eating up into sales of the existing chicken burgers, or it's the paneer patties, which vegetarians usually go for when they go out. So a very surprising insight which came from them was that, actually none. This is incremental revenues for us. So that was a great deal of, initial good signs for us. So not only, whereas these guys started with one product as a limited time offer, they quickly graduated to making it a permanent part of the menu. And not only a permanent part of the menu, but also, a sort of a whole category built around this theme. So I see that increasingly there's a lot of interest coming from food service and, even offline retail.
Let's pause there. Thank you, Gaurav. I think that's really exciting. And all three of these companies, by the way, Imagine Meats, Blue Tribe Foods, and Greenest Foods, their products were in the previous segment, the cooking demo segment that we just had. Let me move to Harshil. Harshil Karia from Schbang. Thank you for joining us. Your team at Schbang has built fantastic brands over the last several years. I mean, including Imagine Meats' brand that you've worked with.
Yeah, we are so fortunate. We are so fortunate that we got to build that brand, and such a fun brand. I'm really looking forward to talk about it.
So, Harshil, what would you say is driving this kind of resonance that all of these entrepreneurs are speaking to? What are the driving factors from what you've seen in terms of delighting consumers? What are they looking for in building these brands?
So I think first and foremost, I mean, it's great to hear all the stories of all the entrepreneurs and some of the traction in the marketplace. I think also I just want to make the point that I think Ritesh and Genelia coming into the market is actually great for the entire market. Just the traction that they brought into this marketplace. You've suddenly got a Shah Rukh Khan and Salman Khan talking about plant-based meat, and you've got, of course, Ritesh and Genelia. And so I think it's great. And I've also, I just want to actually, Genelia as well, so I just want to say a big compliment. I go to these, the other day, last week, I was at a conference, a climate change conference, and then I entered and I was like, hey, on the side there's Ritesh and Genelia, and I was like, these guys are working so hard to build the market. So I think right now it's actually a market building stage, market development stage, and I think everybody's going to win because of that. The question that you put about building the brand, I think, I think we're so fortunate that we've got to build such a fun brand with Imagine Meats. Particularly, I can speak about Imagine Meats because, I think one of the big insights was that, for the consumer, food is fun. And that's what we try to do. So imagine if climate change could happen through a Sikh kebab or, imagine mutton biryani on Mangalwar. So those are some of the kind of ways we try to pitch the brand to make it not just, it's not so much, I think consumers don't care so much. Honestly, people don't care so much about the environment. People care more about having fun. And I think we can balance that. And, if we can bring that balance, that's something that, has worked really well, I think, for the Imagine Meats brand and how it's been built.
Thank you, Harshil. Yeah, and Harshil is himself actually the hardest working man in town. So thank you for everything that you're bringing to the space. In terms of building this space further, Rajesh, this is really interesting. Amazon Fresh recently sat up and made some major moves following some briefings, some collaborations we did together. With your massive distribution outreach, that's really great news. So would you tell us more about how are you experimenting with plant-based meats and why is this area exciting to you?
Hey, Varun, first, thanks for having us in this event. Some of us attended this last year, and those were the times which were very exciting for us to know about this category. Otherwise, this category primarily within Amazon was very North American category. In our reviews, we kind of didn't even attend these categories reviews. So for me and our team here in Amazon, it was an eye-opener last year to know that there are a lot of entrepreneurs, people working on this category and kind of figuring it out how to bring it into India. And I think that's where Amazon's journey began. And thanks to you and team at GFI India, Mr. Amod, these guys really worked hard. We had some knowledge sessions created within Amazon ecosystem for people to understand that this is a possibility within India. And I totally agree with Harshil when he said Genelia and others from Bollywood, have joined into this. It really created a lot of flip for us to start thinking. That was phase one for us, just the learning its possibilities and everything. Phase two was we started speaking to some of the brands. Sohil here is one of a big partner for us today, and we started to evaluate whether it's possible for us to start playing in this segment as Amazon Fresh for our customers. Surprisingly, the insights all the brands bought in, our team here in Amazon believes this is the place to be. We have to be bringing this to our customers, and the phase 3 for us was just launching them. We kind of pivoted towards one brand, picked it up, and just put it for our customers. I mean, I would use this platform to tell Sohil, please keep sending stocks. We are running out of stocks. So I mean, it's a very good problem to have right now. And this is what we have done in last 1 year. Learned about the category, did some heavy lifting with some of the brands and partners. Very exciting to be here. I would like to interact with many more wonderful people who are working in this segment, and use Amazon's advantage, if I can say that, to take this to our consumers. I mean, some of the consumer insights are awesomely interesting. We didn't lose customers to this. We have more number of customers buying this. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajesh. That is really exciting. And by the way, some of the experiments that you have run is in some zip codes in places like Mumbai, you've launched a 96% discount on Blue Tribe Foods products, right? Which is just, I mean, I'm incredibly proud of the GFI India team for making something like that happen. That's unheard of. It's really, really cool. And by the way, you said Hollywood. It is Hollywood too that's supporting this space internationally. But we don't want it to remain an American phenomenon, right? That's what we're trying to do.
So my apologies. My apologies. I didn't get the name right.
No. It's a fair point. But listen, let's move on. I mean, I think we want to make sure we're not just congratulating ourselves, but identifying opportunities for improvement. So Sohil, let's build off what Rajesh said. Blue Tribe Foods is now beginning a more ambitious go-to-market and scale-up phase, including the Amazon Fresh experiment. I mean, recently you also had a pretty historic move with TV ads ads that I want the audience to hear about as well. So tell us more about these forays, these experiments. You mentioned Horeca as well.
So yeah, I mean, thanks for that, and thanks for noticing that we went on Hotstar recently with the World Cup T20. What we've been noticing for the past few months is that it's almost a technology adoption curve, where you have early adopters and innovators being the first guys into the plant-based meat category, and we're noticing that there's a huge, almost a chasm between these guys and the rest of the majority of the population that we've got to kind of cover. And yeah, huge thank you to Ritesh and Genelia who've come in and gotten the plant-based meat category more visible to the majority of the Indian population, right? I think that's where the challenge now lies. We've got people who understand the plant-based meat category already buying into it and telling their friends and family about it. But how do we get to that major chunk of the Indian population which does not have the awareness behind what the animal industry is doing to the planet and how plant-based meats can help mitigate that climate change, right? Obviously, we've been working on how to get plant-based meat across to this huge chunk of the population. The Amazon experiment is one of them. The Hotstar experiment with the World Cup is one of them, and we have a few more lined up for the next few months to come, which I hope that I will be able to show you rather than talk about on this forum.
Yeah, ads during the T20 Cricket World Cup is just, I mean, surreal, right? We've also been in a pandemic, so these kinds of big moves for the industry are really cool and a marker of how far we've come. So Gaurav, very similar question. You've had quite the journey. You've made excellent progress, but we're still very much early in the industry. So how do you intend to actually bring smart protein to every plate, which is the title of this session?
Varun, there's obsessive orientation with distribution. I think that is, channel development is one thing which is really at the center of all of these things. Now, every now and then we keep going back to the drawing board. And, I refer to this as the taste, price, permissibility code. Taste and price we all are aware of. Getting the best in class product on people's plates without really drilling holes in their pockets is what taste and price is about. When I say permissibility, we keep talking to a lot of our consumers, and one thing which we notice across board is that people tell us also, they come back to us with this feedback saying, yeah, there are so many, ingredients that we would want you to, dabble with. So why don't you get soy and gluten maybe out of the formulation? So permissibility is that angle of the code. So I think once we solve for all three elements of this particular code, we are good to go in terms of a massive scale up. At the moment, we are, doing active channel development in about 10 cities. So we are in the process of appointing distributors and, getting a sales team in place. Plus, we also think that digital aggregators, and I mean, kudos to Amazon Fresh for doing what they're doing. And I think digital aggregators will have a major role to play because that's where a lot of discovery is happening. So yeah, I mean, I think, obsessive orientation towards distribution is one thing that will help us solve this problem much quicker.
Harshil, on this question of distribution, I mean, we've talked about how building a brand is not just about attractive visuals. It's a big part of it, but that's not just all it is, right? So as we think about how we go from this early adopter market to the true mass market, can you offer any insights from other work that you've done on building brands or categories? How are we going to get there?
So, one of the things that I just want to table this point, and we've got so many of the largest promoters in this category sitting on the same table. I think one is, how does the category I think you guys are hitting the nail on the head with the core of the conversation, which is about market development, is what it's all about. So, I mean, we all know that we can bring in the star power and we can bring in the advertising and we can do all of that, but it's ultimately at the end point of the channel. And the example of Amazon doing stuff with Blue Tribe is also an amazing example. I think also a large chunk of India is brick and mortar retail. So how do we get more and more to that at the right price points? It's a lot of it is about aggressive market development. Right now also, if we see the communication in the category, it's not mass communication. It is still.
I think we'll move on and oh, sorry, we lost you for a second. Do you want to finish the point, Harshil? It's not mass communication. It's still very.
Yeah, it's still very, niche in terms of the, I think we're at an inflection point there. So if I had to take an example of chocolates, we are at Kya Swad Hai Zindagi Mein of Cadbury Dairy Milk versus, Kuch Meetha Ho Jaye. So I think we have to kind of jump into the Kuch Meetha Ho Jaye. I think we need to figure out that cultural nuance into the Indian consumer. And I think that will be kind of, that will kind of work itself very well with this ramp up of distribution that's happening. So I think everybody's working together. I think the only thing that I think to leave as a point with all the promoters is that how can margins and pricing kind of as a category, how can it work well together to not kill each other's business? So I think that's one lesson that, it seems to be that this is a hyper competitive category that is kind of building itself up with, few key players. So it's not like one single player which is holding fort. And I think they're gone are those days. So we're in a new kind of marketplace. And what some of the lessons are is that how can groups of promoters work together to protect also the margin within the business? So I think that's just a point I want to table on. Sorry,
Harshil, you muted yourself. Yeah.
Sorry, because that's just a point I want to leave on this forum, because you've got a very strong and powerful forum here. So, just this can we not eat into each other's margin is just a point to leave on the table.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And we 100% agree. I mean, increasing the size of the total pie or lifting all boats is all in a new category always going to be vastly more valuable than trying to get a slightly larger slice of a very small pie, right? And I think that's a major opportunity here. One huge piece of this is also driving down cost basis internally. So Mihir, we've seen challenges with bringing costs down up until this point because we're still early in the industry and getting great tasting products out into the market. A lot of this is because of importing ingredients, and we need to evolve this ecosystem really rapidly, even as we try to move into the mass market. So could you give us some thoughts on how you're working on this and where we need to go? You're on mute. You'll need to come off mute.
My apologies. I will take it from where the rest of the panel was talking on the same point. I liked some of the points they made. And let's say to Harshil's point, he talked about essentially value equation, making sure that we get more consumers in. And there really it's a question of, are we creating enough value for those particular consumer sets? That's where our margins will get protected. Just a quick side example that I'm going to state here is look at the flavored milk industry about a decade ago. It was a dead industry. Then some of the innovators worked with us and came along with a milkshake, which was priced at a higher price point compared to the regular milkshake. And actually, even today, the milkshakes are driving the growth for the flavored milk category, despite it being more expensive for consumers. So sometimes I think the question is really, are you providing enough value for the consumer in what you're giving? So that value equation piece, I think, counts very well. The other super critical piece is from the perspective of you have your alpha consumers and how do you go to the mass? I think the big learning I have had so far in marketing is for that shift, essentially occasions building and ritual building becomes super critical. And just quoting back to the example I gave, milkshakes thrived on the 4 p.m. association with moms. 4 p.m. is when moms actually, indulge their kids. It's their bonding time. Milkshakes went straight in, dived in, and it's become an occasion in itself. We have plenty of such examples from our food as well. The other very relevant example that comes for our discussion today is from the meat industry. One interesting consumer immersion that I had, the consumer said, whenever I have a party at home, if there are vegetarian dishes, I have to put out 3 or 4 to make it a good party. But if it is mutton gosh, one mutton gosh is good enough. That's supposed to be a party dish. Now, can you create those kind of, positioning with meat alternatives for vegetarians? Then you've created that value and you created the occasion. Coming to the specific question that you asked me on from a import and from a costing perspective, definitely IFF is working on a lot of things. We are actually approaching it more from a product design perspective. Now with both the capability of DuPont and IFF, I have the whole bit with me. I have the proteins, I have the taste. When I talk to my marketing team, I have somebody who's solely responsible for product experience, giving feedback to the team on how sensorially are consumers reacting. I have a consumer insight team which tells me what are they looking for from a lifestyle perspective. So proteins, for example, is a good example that, hey, they're asking for proteins, but at the end of the day, the taste is what's going to matter. And I can blend both the proteins, the flavors, the aroma, and give a full product. In that note, we are actually working on some products which are going to give you wholesome, all of this put together. And I think products like that will deliver not only great value for the customers, because it's going to protect their margins, it will deliver the wow value that they need to the consumers as well. And the great part is, of course, we are looking for partnerships with people like AAK, where they have worked with us in the past and given us very good insights into fats, which can deliver those kind of aromas that we need.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that, Mihir. And that kind of, those partnerships are necessary to move things forward. So Dheeraj, Mihir mentioned, things that you've worked on together. I think in that spirit, as you've begun establishing partnerships even across manufacturing in the country, you're helping companies attain scale more quickly. What is the end game here? What does a mature ecosystem look like if we're going to go from this early adopter to the mass market?
So Varun, the end game is pretty simple. How can we support, facilitate acceleration from ideation to commercialization? I think the last couple of years we have seen a lot of inertia around this one. So I think that's the end game that I'm looking for it, which practically translates into moving the product from farm to the plate. The second question that you asked from the mature ecosystem, from my perspective, is easy access to innovation for product development. Because I think
how do I get no more background into? Is that possible?
Excuse me, sorry, we just need to switch off audio for another speaker. Case, if you can hear me, please switch off your audio. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was saying that a mature ecosystem, from my perspective, would be easy access to innovation. We were talking about North American phenomena. So India, it's not about one burger. Burger is not going to be the king for our innovation. You need to have a lot of customization or the regional level to move it from alpha to the mass translation with that. So that's where the product development comes with that. Manufacturing technology, because we are reliant on too many ingredients for import. So that's a local manufacturing technology. Talent availability is another aspect, which I believe that availability of that, and the distribution channel, which we talked about it. But two more important aspects, which I will consider as a part of mature ecosystem, is around right regulation or the right food labeling on the platform, and the choices available to consumers so that they are able to select what fits for them. And that's where I think we as a team in the AAK, EcoPlanet, or the plant-based food business team is working to facilitate the same. And I think we must have to drive this collectively together.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so just a quick time check. We've got about 15 minutes left on this panel. So I want to do, I'm going to move to Genelia and then the final round of questions for everyone. Genelia, what are the biggest hurdles you faced as an entrepreneur here? We're talking about going to every plate, right? So what is stopping us from getting that vision in place?
No, I think the pandemic played a big reason to not be able to be all over and all out. I mean, especially with people like us, we would have been at a lot of places doing a lot of live events, but unfortunately that didn't happen. Restaurants were closed. The stuff that we couldn't really get it to everyone's plate as much as we would want to. But having said that, it being so encouraging in terms of how the plant-based industry has grown and is continuing to grow. As an entrepreneur, you get that kind of energy that you want to put out more products. You want to get into the food service as much as you can. The target is to hit all the QSRs and just get it out there. Just get it for people to taste. I think the basic thing is once they taste it, they're going to understand it. But till then, there will always be a bit of a reservation, especially from people coming from, eating meat. Like today, when I serve our nuggets or when we serve our chicken, they're like, hey, this tastes damn good. But you still need them to make this taste damn good. And I think that will only happen once it all opens out. I don't totally cut off the pandemic, because I think with the whole fear of animal meat coming into the picture was the reason why the plant-based industry also got a lot of eyeballs, because people wanted to make that shift in a certain way. So I think that helped in one point of view, wherein people were like, okay, now we need to get a little more conscious and a little bit to look at our planet that we've ruined over a while, and that's a fact that we can't step out of that. So having said all of this, I think it's a matter of time, and I think it's slowly evolving, and we're coming closer to what we want to see, like on everyone's plate. We want to see a plant-based meat there, and we want to see it to a large extent, helping your environment, helping the fact of animal cruelty, helping all the things that everyone wants to. It's just not wide enough there. So like us, I'm sure there are loads of companies. We hope there are loads of companies that come out there and support this segment, this industry.
Thank you. Yeah. So let's move to action steps. As you mentioned, look, we're emerging from the pandemic now. So, well, I hope we are emerging from the pandemic now. So I think let's go to action steps. Mihir, let me come back to you. You mentioned collaborations, etc. Just in a minute or a couple of minutes, would you please say to entrepreneurs and investors in the audience, how is IFF seeing this space in the country? What kinds of partnerships are you looking to set up? You're on mute.
So one of the best parts about this industry is that it has a lot of potential right now. And IFF feels exactly the same way. We are looking at it from a strategic perspective. So we are doing a lot of developments to support some of the problems that my customers here were mentioning. And even, for example, things that will actually assist Rajesh in really taking it across India. I mean, just to give you an example, I had this very interesting request come from one of the QSR customers. They have a 3-minute principle. The dish has to be ready in 3 minutes from the kitchen, so the local kitchen, and give it to the consumer who comes in. So how do you do it with a meat alternative? We actually created, and they of course have 100 outlets across India. How do you manage the consistency, the taste, even the distribution at a lower cost? We created ambient mixes, which can go without refrigeration across these parts, which were meat alternatives, and which would A, reduce your cost, B, give the consistency required. The only thing that the person needed to do was heat it, mix it with water, heat it, and put it into the product that they're planning to use. So those are the kind of things that we need to understand, and we are looking forward to doing those kind of partnerships for our customers. We continue to do them. This is just one example, and this is an example of what we call is protecting our customers' margins. We are very, very serious about that, because especially for 22, all the entrepreneurs out there expect a rough first half next year, I think, economically speaking. I've seen my customers' margins shave off, and I expect them to continue given the challenges, global challenges that we have. Nothing to do with the current industry. But that's first thing. Second, the other two consumer drivers that we really need to focus on, and something that Genelia touched upon, I think, is the experiential delight that you can provide consumers. And one of the insights that I will share here, I think, is the fact that while flexitarians, especially not flexitarians, actually people who are meat eaters particularly, will have very strong opinions on how something should taste, right? And it becomes a difficult match game to do. At the same time, consider quickly the fact that consumers are not being able to go abroad as much or experience as much abroad food. So we've done a lot of work called Taste of Asia, where we are looking at specifically, we believe, dishes from Korea, for example, and dishes from France are actually going to take off in India. We have created some examples of those, and we are offering that. The benefit of it is the reference is much weaker for the consumer, and you might actually end up selling the concept much easily. It's a cheat code, but it works. So that's something that you could look at. And finally is on healthy living. So anything that from a protein perspective, lower salt, we are more than happy.
Thank you, Mihir.
To support you guys.
That all makes a lot of sense. Rajesh, let me go straight to you from there, because Mihir mentioned how can we take this throughout the country, right? So you've already done some really bold work here. So as next steps, how can we accelerate your forays into the sector? What is it going to take for Amazon Fresh to further accelerate this category?
Varun, I think like we see it from the feedbacks we have received, the initial feedbacks across not only Sohil's brand, but we have also tried with certain dairy products, non-almond dairy products. And the feedback has been, consumers are natural adopters to this. We call it's a relative cultural advantage. Unlike the world where people are non-vegetarian and you call vegetarian specifically, or a vegan or whatever name we provide, India is all about vegetarian and we call out non-vegetarian separately. So there is a whole, you have to turn the funnel around and think of this as one of the customer options. So to my mind, very clearly, one bucket, I think, and that's the request to all the brands and players who are really investing a lot of time, money, energy into this, is how do you call this customer backwards? What is the solution for customers? And very clearly, there are different axes which are at play. We have one set of customers who really feel passionate about sustainability, doing the right thing, not killing animals, even though they love their chicken and mutton. You have that world. You have another world who are, I call them TNT customers. They don't eat non-veg on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and rest of the days they eat non-vegetarian. So how do you go to them? Someone really mentioned that when you have guests at home, you have vegetarians and non-vegetarian. You want to take care of both of them. You primarily keep one non-veg in one counter, one side, and vegetarian on the other side. So all this are opportunity areas, and the relative advantage of everyone adopting to this very quickly is we will not take that much time to get into customer plates as we think we will. And that's what came out in our plans when we launched this as part of our Diwali offers in Mumbai. And now we are working with a couple of brands to see how we can take it pan-India, take it to smaller towns, look at all the possible channels where Amazon can work towards. Now, of course, there are complexity which comes in because some of them are temperature sensitive, some of them are frozen, which limits our ability to take this very fast, rapidly across all the pin codes in the country. But clearly, a customer backward communication or a marketing platform which talks about this. And to me, Varun, you are in the perfect place at the perfect time as GFI to kind of put this whole ecosystem together and talk about it together as a brand. We are too small and this segment is too niche today to be even thinking of price offs, competition with each other. There's a whole ocean to think about to grab this. A lot of retailers in India specifically are very scared of non-vegetarian. So if you look at the big boys, anyway, don't play in non-vegetarian. If I was Sohil, I would actually be knocking at the doors of Reliance Retail saying, you guys don't do anything non-veg. I'm not non-veg. I'm pure veg. Get me in your stores. They have 700 stores. So to me, it is just waiting to explode. And consumers and retailers like us are just waiting. When do I take this to end consumers across the India? That's how I look at it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And Imagine Meats is in Reliance Retail. I'm sure a lot of brands. I see Genelia's laughing there. Okay, Harshil, I'm going to put you on the spot. It's a very kind of similar question. We're in an emergency. Rajesh mentioned Indians might have a predisposition to caring about all of these issues, right? And I know you care deeply about public health, climate, animal welfare, etc. So is there anything you'd like to talk about what Schbang is going to do to drive further uptake of these foods at every level?
I think specifically what role we can play is an enabler within the industry to, I think the key trend or the key thing that I'm taking out of this is on maximum plates. So we're going to play that role in driving towards maximum plates, whether it is through partnerships with our customers to ramp up distribution, whether it is working with retail partners. So we are working very closely with Reliance Retail, with Nature's Basket, So, some of these retail partners, how can we work closely with them to get this category more onto the plate? And then, with partners like yourself, with GFI on what we can be of assistance within the ecosystem. So that's the role we are going to play. We are excited to be part of this industry and help in some small part to shape this exciting industry.
Thank you, Harshil. Dheeraj, AAK has also been a major partner and supporter of the sector in India. What are the biggest hurdles to our getting to this vision, and how can we work together to address them?
I think, Varun, I believe that what Rajesh mentioned, there is a lot of opportunity. There is an ocean of opportunities available in this space. So the biggest hurdle or the biggest risk is putting a food which is not tasting good on the plate of the consumer, and the consumer is not coming for the repeat purchase. And that's where the biggest risk I see for the entire ecosystem. While there is the sector is hot, people are jumping onto the space. The biggest risk I see is that if you don't understand your consumers well, you don't understand the positioning of your product well, then you will land up. You would like to move the product fast onto the plate, but you risk the consumers not coming back to you. So that's the biggest risk. Beside that, what I talked about is, India, I think we'll have to customize more and more, because I think India, if you really see that, we move few hundred kilometers, you find a different food and a different palate. So which practically means a lot of customization needs to be done looking at the consumer insight. So that's another one, which practically means that there is a constant cycle of innovation that needs to be done, which talks about around the product development piece of it. I think so. If you ask me that, how can we work together to address these issues? I believe that collaboration is one of the key element, and co-development are the two things which I strongly believe that can help us to create a sustainable business model together as a value chain.
Thank you so much, Dheeraj. And I'm actually the final three questions are for our entrepreneurs here who are making the smart protein that we can take to every plate. So Gaurav, Sohil, Genelia, it's really the same question for all of you. You all have very ambitious plans. What can this look like over the next 10 years? What does your company look like? How can we help you get there? So I think we can start with Sohil and then Gaurav and then Genelia. Sohil, go ahead.
I think the easy answer to this is innovation. I mean, we've got to be innovative in terms of producing products which are better in taste, better in macronutrient and micronutrient delivery, and priced the same or less as the alternatives that we're trying to replace, right? It's going to require a lot of investment into setting up localized value chains for raw materials, for all kinds of packaging. In fact, even investment into cold supply chain, because that is something that beyond the top metro cities of India is not very, very well, is at a very nascent stage in India right now, right? And I think I agree completely with Dheeraj when he says that we've got to have a larger portfolio of meat alternatives. India is not a one product market at all. You cannot have an Impossible Foods in India with one product patty, with one burger patty, right? I think the other big thing that we have to kind of address is that we're competing against meat, which is at a 5% GST right now, with products which are at a much more expensive level than that. So if we've got to be able to be competitive against them, the playing field ought to be level over there. So I guess that's something that we got to keep working as a category and as an industry with the government and the powers that be.
Brilliant, Sohil. Yeah, many relatively unsexy things like policy interventions, taxation, all really important to address. Gaurav?
I absolutely agree with Sohil, Varun. One more thing is that, we'd like to get the bottom of the pyramid consumer involved. So, where I sit in my office, just right across the street, there's this slum area. And there are, wet meat shops all over the place. The slum dwellers really love their meat. So it's a not so gentle reminder to me that why we started this. And, it's a dream. It's a long shot, but nonetheless, it's a dream that in 10 years from now, one way or another, if we can get the bottom of the pyramid consumer also involved in this ecosystem somehow, I think that would be a game changer.
Thank you for sharing, Gaurav. Yeah, and there is a story here about getting great protein and great tasting products to people who might not otherwise be able to afford meat every day, right? So that is an opportunity as well. And Genelia, finally, what's the big vision and how are we going to get there?
No, I agree with both the other two companies, with Mr. Sohil and Mr. Gaurav, that, innovation is the key. We at our end are also looking at, when you have a version 1, you try to get it to version 2 as well of the same meat that you have. So if this is great, we want to get it better and better in the same zone. In a similar way, we've launched with 9 products, and we look at 4 more, which is also something that consumers are used to, like a butter chicken, a chicken tikka, sausages. Our entire portfolio at Imagine Meats was to have something for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. So that's how we played it. So there are enough of options there. There are enough of people getting it to their plate, and it's not considered as something that you don't want to touch. It's like, okay, I've had this in meat, now I want to try it in something else. And hopefully taste is the key, and we need to get that right there. Like the flavor, the taste has to be spot on, and that's something that you really need to work with. But I think being India and being culturally so rich and so into spices, it's also a lot easier than just having an impossible burger. We're not a burger eating nation. So I think these things help out in actually dishing out a lot of plant-based products. So where it was a matter of even our campaigning, we came out with it not being redundant and green and boring and just how organic and plant-based is treated. We wanted it to be like it's really cool. So I think plant-based meats needs to be the new cool meat, or the happy meat as we call it.
Oh gosh, yeah, that was a very action-packed, insights-packed 45 minutes. I'm sure everyone's heads are spinning from all of those insights, and we actually don't have time to synthesize all of that. Genelia, Mihir, Harshil, Rajesh, Sohil, Dheeraj, and Gaurav, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I'm going to move on to the next half of this session now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you for having us, Varun.
Take care, everyone. Okay, so for the audience, we're going to move on to the second half of this session with Mr. Kroetov and Siddharth Mangaram from Live Kindly Co. And we're going to dive deeper into many of these ambitious visions for India. I'm not going to spend a lot of time setting the context here or anything like that. I'm going to let our panelists do that. But Kroetov is the chairman and CEO of the Live Kindly Co., which is a global plant-based food company. I'll let him tell you more about it. And Siddharth Mangaram is country manager at Live Kindly Co. for India. And we're going to hear a little bit about their ambitious visions globally and in the country. Thank you for joining us, Kes and Siddharth. Really appreciate your time. Let me jump right into it. Kes, you're leading Live Kindly Co. globally. You've had a career at the apex of the corporate world. Could you tell us a little bit about your personal history and why you decided to jump into this area headfirst? And by the way, what is the Live Kindly Collective?
Yeah, thank you, Varun, and it's an absolute great pleasure to join in this event. I personally am in New York, but it is great to be here together. My history is that I've been working for Unilever for 27 years, and so I started in the Netherlands. Then I went to South Africa, to Singapore, to China, back to South Africa, then to Brazil. Then I became part of the global Unilever executive team as responsible for North America. And then finally, I became president for one of the global divisions for Unilever. And so in that sentence, I've actually been part of the global food system, lived and worked in all continents around the world. And so when then the next step, I wanted to become CEO of Unilever. But actually, when that didn't happen, the Hindi always say, if you get it, it's good. But if you don't get it, it's even better, because you're destined for bigger and better things. And that is indeed what the Live Kindly Collective is all about. My mother has always said, you need to put your talents at service to society and never waste your talents. And so this is actually the moment where these elements come together. The world's biggest hunger actually is about climate change and inequality. And it is about our leadership and our generation who needs to make sure is that we actually give a positive contribution to that world. My unique skills and expertise is all around the global food system. So understanding is that this is a broken food system where we need to change actually from an animal-based food system, which is responsible for close to 15% of greenhouse gases, and we know all the story. But the good thing is that there's not only the understanding of the issue, but there is a very clear solution, and that is the change to alternative protein. So with that in mind, it was very clear is that I wanted to spend my second part of my career in building a global plant-based food business. So that's how we started, actually in the end of 2019 with our anchor investor, Blue Horizon, which is the biggest venture capital company investing in plant-based food in the world, they actually, together with him, Roger Lienhart, and myself, we said we will, at scale, at speed, create the global plant-based food company. It needs to be global because you need to actually change a global current system into a superior system, and it needs to be preeminent because actually impact and scale matters. So that's why we started with the Live Kindly Collective, and that fundamentally started with making plant-based living the new norm. That's our mission. And we fundraised over $500 million in the last 15 months. So an incredible amount. And we've put that to work. We've actually acquired 5+1 small companies, whether that's Like Meat in Germany or whether it is Fry's Family in South Africa, Oomph in Sweden, No Meat in the UK, the Dutch Wheat Burger in the Netherlands, but also Live Kindly as a media platform where we are actually the voice and the inspiration for the movement. So that is how we started, and we believe is that with that, we are now starting to get ready to come to India, which obviously at the end will become the most attractive and the most sizable plant-based food country in the world. And so that is why we are here, and that's why we are here with our country manager, Siddharth.
Thank you firstly, thank you for joining us from New York, Case, and thank you for sharing all of that. That's a very big and expansive vision. And as you mentioned, Siddharth is tasked with building out Live Kindly Co's India foray and strategy. Case has just said it's going to be the most important market in the world. I want to get into that in a little while, but you also have an interesting background. You've spanned startups, the corporate world, and consulting. How did it all kind of lead to this? What led you to the Live Kindly Co?
Yeah, half of my life, if I were to rewind, is with large companies like McKinsey and Microsoft and Coke. And the second half of my career has been with startups, right? I founded a couple of startups in the telecom space and in the social space. And when I exited my last startup, which was in the social space, it was actually a dating company. And I took a step back. It was around the time that the pandemic had just about begun, and I was remembering, Steve Jobs' famous speech at Stanford about connecting the dots, right? About your life, and 20, 25 years, similar to Case, it's a good enough time to actually connect a bunch of dots. And starting with, say, my MBA at Michigan, where I had the good fortune of working for 2 years with C.K. Prahalad, and we've spoken in previous panels about the bottom of the pyramid. So that's we were actually the class that he experimented with and he tested a lot of his theories with. And then moving on to having great impact in companies like McKinsey and Microsoft. And then I figure that large companies have certain assets. They're able to scale really fast. They've got great processes. They've got great brands. They've got great systems. But I think at the heart of it, I'm also an entrepreneur. And so then I decided to set up a series of companies. Actually, the first one was in the telecom space, and these were all venture backed or with some amount of institutional funding. So they really helped me get into spaces where I could see leapfrogging going on, right? So in the telecom space, there was definitely, I was really at the, in the center of action between 2005 and 2010, where we saw so much action going on in telecom. And then in the social space, over the last 10 years, I ran a company called Flow, where we helped, several thousand people get married, right? And so when I connected all these dots, what I felt is that I like actually both of these parts, right? I like the scale, I like the mission, and I also like working with really smart people. And so when Case and I were introduced, I think when he introduced the Live Kindly Collective to me as a group of people who are founders, entrepreneurs, and global leaders, that really resonated with me. And then when I dug a little deeper and I said, okay, this also resonates with my personal belief system of actually doing something that is actually useful for the world, right? We've got so much privilege with ourselves, all of us who are over here. And what can we do? What can I do, for the next 20 years that actually has a significant impact? And so that's how it all sort of came together. And I think, being mission aligned was really the first and the most important thing. And to also use my skills as a business person and the belief that, business is a force for good, right? It all tied in together. And so that's how we've been sort of running the collective and aligning with partners globally as well as very, very locally. And like Kay says, this is perhaps the most exciting spot in the world at the moment in this industry.
Thank you so much for both of you for sharing that. I think we need to get more stories out there in terms of what kinds of talent is in this space, what kinds of people are in this space in terms of values, etc. Because it is very inspirational to people at all levels of experience, all sectors to consider entering this, and that's going to be the foundation of success here. But Case, I want to examine the statement you made with a fine-tooth comb a little bit here, because you've talked about a lot. We've talked at length about ambition, the need for ambition in our space, the need to establish a global company. And we're talking about the creation of a new industry. You are nothing if not ambitious, as you've just evidenced in what you've said. So would you tell us more about the grand vision here? What are you doing to build this global company, and what does that mean? Sorry, I think you're on mute.
Obviously, everything starts with the ambition, and what ultimately comes down to the consumer. And I believe is that if we go to 2040, 2050, just to put a stake in the ground, we will actually look back as humanity and ask ourselves this question: why at all were we eating animals? And so I think this is a little bit the same as, when in 1882 slavery was abolished, as the last country in the world was in Brazil. And now we look at that and said, what were we thinking? And so we should start from that end in mind, and that is really making plant-based living the new norm. And that is, the ultimate end result what we're doing here. It is so obvious because it's a superior food system in place. And so that is where it starts. The second point is, if we properly do that, you see what the size of these businesses can become. And so if you look at it through the lens of Credit Suisse, they say actually by 2050, the upper end will be 1.1 trillion of plant-based food industry, and their low point will be 550 billion. And if you go to BCG, 2030 already on 300 billion. So the point is that this is something which is going to happen. The consumer is ahead of the industry, and so what it is up to us is to build the capability and the capacity to deliver against that. And technology will go very, very fast. If you look 10 years back, of course, the products were there, but actually the taste was inferior, and therefore there was a compromise for consumers. What it is up to us as the food technology part of this is to be able to make sure that there is zero compromise. And at the same time, we are now in the iPhone 2, more to come as we know. What is critically important to be able to get to this scale is actually this notion of leapfrog, and to make it affordable protein for all. And that is basically where the big vision will sit here. Because at the moment, many of the world are having low or no protein. And like in the mobile phone, there was no or low phone, and they actually leapfrogged, and the world leapfrogged, not via landline into mobile phone, but immediately, obviously, towards the mobile phone. And that, as the digital revolution, will happen the same in the protein revolution, where we go from no to low protein immediately into high quality, affordable protein for all. That means is that China, in Africa, in Brazil, in India, this is the biggest step change which we need to deliver. And it makes so much sense because ultimately, if you think about it economically, there's 5 drivers why we will have a significantly lower cost than the current animal-based food system. The first one is obviously if scale comes in versus what currently is there, the cost curve will go exponentially down. The second one is that what you will have is that, ultimately is that the cost of animal-based will go up in 2 ways. One is the subsidies will go down, and the second one in true cost will be actually like the sugar tax in Mexico and the likes. That will happen here as well. And if you think about the Green Deal, you already see is that Europe is moving into that. But all the countries in the world, again now in the COP26, everybody talks about a net zero as a country, whether that's in China or whether it is in the US or many India or Japan. Everybody talks about 2050, 2060 net zero. But there needs to be a program behind it. And so therefore, it will take some time, but true cost will go, and that means is that subsidy will go out and tax will go in. The fourth driver of all this is that in plant-based food, we will get the benefit of carbon credits. And so what we are doing actually ourselves is that we have yellow pea field peas in South Africa. We are planting them in 3 areas in South Africa, which is in Caledon, in Malalaan, and in Middelburg. And we are measuring now what is happening there in terms of the carbon sequestering. So we get nutrients into the soil. And so these are carbon credits. So that's, again, if you look at it, the total value chain, you get another profit pool in there. And then the last one, which is obviously, when you think about the total system, there is nothing clearer is that when you want to have a cost advantage or a disruption of a total industry, you always need to cut out the middleman. Well, this time that's obviously the chicken. And so the chicken is the most inefficient factory in the world. And therefore you go from quality of protein, actually with better protein, and you go immediately and you leapfrog there as well. So this is why we believe is that actually what ultimately will happen is that the cost base of plant-based protein will be significantly lower cost than animal-based. And it's obviously better for the humans. So once that is the case, economically, the system just needs to shift. And that needs to be forcefully done. Because, of course, the traditional industry will hold on and anchor itself. And so what is up to us is really to make sure is that we go ahead of this exponential curve, get the cost base strategically down, and make sure is that the products are superior in their taste, so that indeed, we will get this shift. And that ultimately, as we said, we will look back in 2040 and we will say, why at all were we ever eating animals?
That is really, it's a fascinating kind of sprawling vision, a grand ambition for how we want to create this, right? I think you've made some moral points there, you've made some economic points there, you've made a lot of statements around this case, and thank you for sharing that. Siddharth, I want to examine this. Let's put a devil's advocate lens on this. Okay, I'm just going to put that hat on. Let's dive deeper into those India plans. So let me ask you the fundamental question: why India? Why even do something like this in India in the first place? We eat too little meat for any of this to matter, surely.
Yeah, that's right now, Varun, that, the per capita consumption of meat, thankfully, is actually very low in India, right? For primarily economic reasons. We all know that, over 70% of Indians would actually do eat meat, and they would eat a lot more if they could afford it. And if you project out, the growth of our GDP per capita income over the next, 10 or 20 years, you're going to see that that's actually going to be going up. And there's a correlation between protein consumption and income rise. And like Case has mentioned, like I mentioned earlier, this is a massive opportunity for us to bypass the entire meat adoption curve, right? And we actually leapfrog that entire thing. So one analogy is, of course, the telecom analogy, but I think there's another one. I think we are at I'm old enough to know what happened in Y2K. And what that did with the IT industry in India, right? And that just spectacularly created so many valuable companies, right? Whether it's the Infosys, the Wipro, the TCS, etc. And there is an inflection point. We just spoke about it earlier in the session about how all this buzz going on, and you can actually feel that buzz going on, right? And India is going to be one of the core centers of this innovation, right? So there's obviously a massive population. There's 1.3 billion of us out here. That's growing incomes, right? And a growing appetite for protein. There's also points which are, around the talent. If you look around the world right now, you've got Indian leaders across the world, across companies, across industries, and across levels. Right? Whether it's, the Satya Nadellas of the world, or whether it's someone who's just out of college getting into, a job outside of our country, right? And I think that there's a massive opportunity that we have over here as an ecosystem to actually make India an innovation hub. And that actually will start with a lot of the talent part of it. The third part that I'd say that is not really been explored enough, and I think there's again an evolution that needs to happen over here, is really on the technology itself. The core technologies are still in the very, very early stages of development, right, around the world, and certainly in India. And when we look at things that have now taken the fancy of the rest of the world, right, which we have taken for granted forever, like Ayurveda, etc. I think there's a massive opportunity. And in Keyur Bhatia's conversation, there was a discussion around how we can actually take our hero dishes and make them very popular, not just with the Indian diaspora, but in various parts of the world. So I think there are many ways that India can become a center of excellence, not only obviously to cater to this massive opportunity for ourselves, but also to export various innovations to different parts of the world. So I think it's always day one, and the energy that I see right now is palpable for sure.
Thank you, Siddharth. Sorry, I'm going to go back to Siddharth. I think I want to dive a little bit deeper on what he said. Let me stick with you, Siddharth. So you've mentioned a lot of areas of opportunity. By the way, I used to say the word leapfrog so much in external panels that we had a leapfrog jar in our office where I had to put 10 rupees in every time I said the word leapfrog on a public panel. And it's just delightful to hear other people say the word leapfrog, so I don't have to say it. Anyway, India is obviously a very complex market, right? So everything you're saying, yep, we principally believe to be true, right? But there is a lot of thinking and upfront time and investment required to get to what we're talking about. So especially if we're talking about going to every plate. So what would you say, Siddharth, are the biggest challenges you've discovered through your explorations in your current role for the vision you've both just laid out?
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of the points again. I'd go back to Sohil's points earlier around market development, around establishing the category, around making sure that the price parity is there across the entire pyramid. Right now, when we look at the offerings, they're generally retailing at over 1,000 rupees per kilo, right? There is a market for that. It is not a very massive market. We've also on panels earlier, and I completely subscribe to that, in saying that we need to have products, brands, and offerings across the entire pyramid. I think that's going to be pretty challenging. There's complexity in business in India, whether it is around imports, whether it is around again GST, whether it is around setting up a set of HSN codes that we all agree on with the government. But I do think that these are all addressable problems, and whether it is through folks like GFI, through industry collaborations, as well as engagement with other stakeholders like the government and policy, and then obviously with the farmers, right? I think these are addressable problems. These are not unaddressable or unsolvable problems. So, like every initial foray into an industry, there are going to be significant challenges, and let's not gloss over them. I think there's a ton of hard work that all of us have to do as an ecosystem over here. Distribution. I mean, again, that came up in an earlier conversation. We have 14 million points of distribution, but the number that are cold chain ready is a tiny fraction of that, right? So I think, but at the same time, we have seen businesses grow to billion-dollar businesses, valuation-wise, which are in the cold chain in relatively short periods of time. So I think they are solvable problems. It's just going to be it's going to be a long, hard slog for us to get to that promised land.
But it's worth doing. That's I think
for sure, of course, that's why we're all here. Yeah,
absolutely, 100%. So, Case, it's a similar question to you. I mean, you've mentioned you're bringing tremendous experience and expertise from organizations like Unilever here, and so are your executive teams globally. When let's say Unilever in India, and they haven't said this to us to be clear, but Hindustan Unilever might turn around and say, we're not ready for this. We'd rather sell Horlicks, which is a true mass market product, right? So, of course, companies internationally like Unilever internationally are really putting their money where their mouth is here and creating an ambitious vision, as you are at Live Kindly Co. So what would you say we need to do to bring all of these people together in service of this grand vision? I mean, you've created a lot of partnerships, etc., but how are you rallying people around to your cause when they might otherwise say, why even do this in India?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, what is very unique about our company is that we call it the Live Kindly Collective. We really want to make sure is that we bring, you know, the different parts of the value chain, and that we did bring the different parts of the industry all together. So that comes, and it starts with the fact is that when we go into countries, there's many of the local companies who say, you know, we want to join because basically we think hashtag stronger together. We want to, you know, be, and not all have hundreds of smaller businesses, basically all doing similar things, but actually come together because, you know, fundraising, setting up of infrastructure, digital infrastructure and all that, we have already done that. And so therefore there's something here about, you know, the consolidating force of making sure is that we are hashtag stronger together. So that's the first part of it. The second part is that what is unique in our model is that we go both upstream and downstream. And so upstream we go and we really go to the farmers, and we make sure is that we have this unique seed, and that can help to be able to develop the industry. In South Africa, they call it green gold. We have signed a partnership in China as well, all the way upstream for organic feedstock for plant-based. And it is super strategic that we help to develop that for the right cost and the right quality of protein. So that's upstream. And again, it's part of the collective. If you go downstream, again, you know, what we do is we partner with really local good partners to be able to make sure is that we use existing infrastructure. And so in Europe, we have a partner which is called PHW, and they are a chicken company, actually the biggest in continental Europe. And they're basically, they say, we want to be part and actually transform the industry. And so it's better to transform an incumbent, use their infrastructure, as long as you're mission aligned that needs to happen. In South Africa, we have a partner which is called RCL Foods. And once again, they have 2,000 salespeople and 200 account managers and a total end-to-end infrastructure which we can use and build the industry on. And so it starts with the collective coming together, which is the core of the industry. We go actually in partnership with both upstream and in downstream. And then there's obviously the way is that we work it together with government. In China, you know, we're working with Yashing, which is, you know, one of the best economic zones there. In South Africa, we are talking to this to be able to develop the industry in Europe, and we're talking to Timmermans and the likes. And so basically everywhere where we are, we will take, as a collective, we will take everybody with us. And then there is this voice of the industry, and GFI, you guys are doing a stunning job in India and in Asia. But the voice of the industry needs to really step up. That is why we have a media platform in the US as being livekindly.com. We are broadening out that media platform because we need to inspire everybody for and to make plant-based living the new norm. So that is how we think about it. And if you really lift it up then, and you think about, you know, this is an attractive market, we have an innovative model and the best team to be able to do that, both globally and locally, and you think about, you know, how this total business model will evolve, then you really think about, you know, the headline that this is truly a protein transformation, and you know that is what we want to create, and we want to make sure is that India will be at the leading part of it, as Siddharth has said. All the ingredients are there to be able to really create this as a next really big industry for India, first for India itself, and then maybe potentially also as an export of plant-based food.
Yeah, thank you, Kees. A lot of this is going to rest on just taste and price and convenience and fitting into people's lives, right? Meeting people where they are, because I think there will be, of course, a large group of people that's receptive to this idea that we can make plant-based living the new norm when we talk to them about it. But for the vast majority of the population, what we're seeing, at least from consumer research, etc., in this generation, we have to meet them where they are. So product development, innovation, continued improvements in taste and cost, etc., will continue to be key. So, Kees, could you talk a little bit further about some of the work you've done in product development specifically? For example, localization of flavor profiles and formats and all of the exciting stuff like that.
What you've said is true for this industry and this market, but it is true for any industry and any market. So, of course, it needs to be always consumer needs states, and then, making sure is that the two moments of truth, whether that is, where you can find the product, i.e. availability, and then, is that you have the ability to buy it. In terms of accessibility and taste will be absolutely critical. So of course that is also the case in this industry. What we realize is that obviously in the food industry you have 5 key trends. The one is from animal to plant-based. The second one is cleaner label, more natural ingredients. The next one is sustainable packaging. The next one is about personalization, and the last one is about localization. And so the food industry has always been in local taste. And at the same time, what you see is that more and more people say they also want to get it from the local farms. And so this whole notion about being a global business and a local business, getting global skill and expertise and local intimacy is absolutely critical. We have launched in China 2 unique brands for China, actually in Mandarin, but in English it's called Giggling Pig and Happy Chicken. And why are they giggling and why are they happy? Because they're still alive. And so this is all cartoons and it's for Gen Z, etc. So you make it very, very locally relevant. But also, the products, as one of the speakers before said, the world doesn't eat hamburgers. In America, you eat hamburgers and, a little bit in the West, but that is a top dish in America. And so therefore the top dish was from hamburger to plant-based hamburger. Well, in the rest of the world, we eat different things. And so, for example, in China, dumpling is obviously a very big thing. And there's pork in it. So you go from a dumpling with animal-based pork into a dumpling with plant-based pork. And so that is basically the logic which you need to do. In South Africa, we have something which is called boerenworst. And so nowhere around the world, you would do a barbecue with something which is called boerenworst. But what we have is a unique local boerenworst with the local taste, which is called the championship taste. And so that is very, very, very local. You have the same in Germany. There it is a braadworst. Everywhere you have these unique products, which are very, very unique. In the UK, they eat pies. And so there you do a plant-based pie. So that is obviously the way that you need to do it. We actually call it, it's a simple swap. You keep everything the same, you just swap this out, and that is together not only, that it is plant-based and therefore better for our human body, but it's actually also, it is, no compromise on taste. If anything, it will be better. So that is the whole logic, and that is where your point comes on why it is so important to be really, really local. India's cuisine is obviously one of the most complex, but also one of the most richest cuisines which we can have. And so what a beautiful opportunity to be able to bring this into the beauty of the traditional Indian cuisine. And then, as Siddharth says, we first do that in India, but what a beautiful thing to do that also in other parts of the world.
So Siddharth, in just a couple of minutes, could you speak a little bit further to these opportunities in India, dive a little deeper into research, product development, even channels and things like that before we move into a final question?
Yeah, I think there's probably, again, I don't want to repeat what has already been spoken about on the panel earlier, but I think if I take a step back and I look at it as an ecosystem, I think a lot of the opportunity lies over there, right? And some of the work that GFI is doing in terms of developing smart protein corridors, right? I think that is a great opportunity for us. And I live in Bangalore. I see obviously IT and biotech as massive players over here, but I also see garments out here. There's a garment park over here which has thousands of employees. So I think that is one big part that the ecosystem needs to come together, where we actually have these plant protein corridors. In terms of research, again, the conversations that I've had over the last year with senior researchers has been extremely encouraging, right? But I think what needs to happen is that needs to percolate right down to the undergraduate level, so that we actually have people entering the industry, not just at, postdoctorate levels and at scientist levels, which are obviously very, very critical. But we also have people who straight out of college want to actually get into the industry because the industry obviously is welcoming of them, and the opportunity exists for these jobs over there, right? I think the other thing that is absolutely critical is for us to integrate in India with the local economy, right? I don't think there's a copy paste model that will work over here. We've got a very complex agri system. They've got a unique policy approach to our decision making. It's very consultative. It does take time. We've got the whole university system. We've got folks in the government, obviously, that need to be brought on board. So I think, in short, those are the bigger sort of rocks that we have to address. In addition to everything that folks have said in the past, right? Earlier in the panel, the distribution is the route to market, very, very critical, right? Those are the business aspects of it. I'm just adding to those points rather than repeating those points. So I think overall there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, and I'm actually very, very positively inclined because I'm seeing things move in the same way that technology has moved in the past, IT specifically, biotech, as well as the telecom world. So early days, but the sky is the limit right now for us in India.
Yeah, I agree. What we're seeing in terms of a trajectory or a path forward, just in terms of, and Siddharth, this, we've worked so closely. We've seen the ecosystem develop even since we've started working together. The momentum is fantastic, right? So
absolutely.
Just as a final word on all of this, we're encouraging people that if we need to fulfill this ambitious vision, as you guys are doing at the Live Kindly Collective, we need to bring people together and go mission mode on all of this: academia, industry, government, etc. So Siddharth, and first case with the final word. What would you say to industry and government and academia to get them to work with you or even challenge you in building this new sunrise industry?
I think the first thing is to really appreciate the potential that we have over here. It's literally a once in a generational opportunity, right? At many levels, whether you talk about it at an ecological level, whether you talk about it at a social level, whether you talk about it at an economic level, right? We have this terrific opportunity for us as a society to actually transform the food system. That is the most foundational point that sort of will then have every other part of the ecosystem plug into it, right? And being mission aligned is like I said, the reason that I am at the collective is because the first question I asked is this aligned with my personal vision and mission, right? So that is really the number one aspect. And I'll put a plug in over here for folks who are listening to this. If you are interested in the Live Kindly Collective, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to speak with you, right? We are hiring, and I would love to actually speak with you. In terms of challenging us, I think it's just, again, a summary of what we've spoken about. There's sort of the price parity. There is a significant amount of work that I think we need to do as an industry to build on the technology, right? For example, the meat-based industry, right? Whether it's the cow or the poultry or whatever, they are not innovating. A cow is not innovating to make itself tastier, right? But what we are doing, like Case mentioned, we are probably at an iPhone 2 right now, and we've got to get to iPhone 15. So there's a significant amount of improvement that's required over here. That's going to take significant amount of effort. And I think the challenges are actually going to be presented to us really from the consumer, because they're the ones who are going to have the final word on what is acceptable and the way it's presented to them, and in the entire value proposition. So I'd say very, very bullish on this, and looking forward to actually connecting with folks in the ecosystem to make this a reality.
Case, just the final word, just in a couple of minutes. How do we go mission mode on all of this?
So I think you need to lift it up to the highest level, and that is the challenges of our generation. We had on the 29th of July, this was the day is that we had actually already consumed all the carbon for this year. And so the rest of the year we are borrowing from our next generations. It is up to us to be able to really make a lasting impact. And we can do that basically through 3 industries to help climate change and inequality. And the 3 are obviously the energy industry, the transportation industry, but also the food industry. And the food industry actually can shift the fastest. Just if everybody around the world, 1 meal a day, 7.7 billion people will just make that simple choice. And it is up to us to make that simple choice indeed simple, because this simple choice needs to be the better choice. And that is, what is up to us to create. That is where government needs to work. That is where, it needs to be as a collective, because the old industry will always be anchored into it. And it's up to us with force and with scale and speed to be able to put this superior business system in. And that is indeed, when we make plant-based living the new norm. So it was great to be together. I believe is that India can play an absolute leading role in this. And so it is great to have this vision together. And it is great to make India a leading edge part, as it is in many other developments of industry. So that's what's up to us to just create.
Okay, Siddharth, thank you so much for your vision and your work towards this new planet. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Namaste.